Good morning and welcome to Citaro Tarot. We're going to do, I don't know, I'm going to try something a little bit different here, sans camera, see if it improves the quality of the clarity of the reading for whatever reason. We can get into that at another time. But okay, so it was interesting as I opened up the camera or opened up the spread rather. Prior to that, I'd been having a conversation with a friend about, anxiety signs, spiritual awakenings, things like that. And I had made sort of a comment that, hey, we're the generation of uh, curse breakers, generational curse breakers, right? A lot of us who have Pluto and Scorpio, it's part of the mission, right? To transform um, wherever that is in your birth chart. But anyway, so in preparation for settling into the energy here this morning, I had rolled some dice, get a sense of what energy we might be working with, and I got the 11th house, which is about our hopes and our wishes and our dreams and our extended networks and technology. And I think, at least everybody I know is grappling with some aspect of that right now, right? Changes in their, just massive awakenings on like, hey, I don't like what I'm doing. Maybe I realized I abandoned a dream long ago and I didn't chase it. And like, why? Why? And taking the conventional path really hasn't gotten me to where I'd hoped it would get me. And so, like, there are a lot of people kind of standing at that crossroads, and I might be one of them. So that's fine. Um, and then we also got the energy of Scorpio and Pluto, right? And so that kind of was a bit of an affirmation, if you will, on my prior conversation and the energy that sort of prompted me to want to hop on after a short hiatus once again to perform a reading. So here we are. So with that in mind, right, transformational energy, Pluto, disruption, you know, break it down to build it back up, right? Transformational energy. It's also, Pluto has recently moved into Aquarius, not just a couple of months ago, I think, in the grand scheme of things. Aquarius is the natural ruler rather of the 11th house, right? And so I think it's appropriate that we see transformation occurring in this space of our lives. Now, I don't know where Scorpio is in your chart, could be anywhere. That could shape the influence it's having on the overall reading here. Maybe it's squaring, maybe it's working together, who knows? You can take a look at that if you are curious. Squares create tension, right? So tension creates growth, right? It puts us in uncomfortable situations so that we can face our fears and ultimately grow. So there could be something about that for you. All right. And so as I was thinking about this, right, and shuffling in preparation for the reading here today, this morning, the Queen of Cups jumped out, and naturally, and typically, I should say, right, we think of her as the warmest, kindest queen in the deck, right? She's about nurturing and love and self care and, intuition and harmony, right? And a lot of those vibes. Recently, I had listened to somebody or followed, I don't know if it was something I had seen or heard necessarily, but it kind of challenged that definition and said, hey, part of that queen is, you know, having strong boundaries, right? To protect that harmony, to protect that peace, to give her space, to be able to nurture herself and others. Um, and the deck I'm using, obviously, this isn't going to be visual for you, but I'm using the Black Violet Tarot. So the reason I bring that up is that it has a few additional cards in it. And if you're curious, obviously, you can go and check the photos out, but of the cards. But in this particular depiction of the Queen of Cups, right, we have sort of a a queen-like figure with tipping her toe in the water. She's holding a large goblet in her left hand, and in her right, it appears as though she has something very small. Maybe I need glasses. It could be a fruit. I don't know. I'm leaning into fruit on this, but it appears as though she's about ready to drop that into the water. And so, as I was kind of reflecting on the concept of the queen and having good boundaries, here she is releasing, right, the things that don't serve her, and or preparing to release, right? She's tipping her toe in the water and she's preparing to release this thing in her right hand, this fruit, this something, the fruit that she maybe was taught to follow, right? The path she was taught to follow, thinking it would bear fruit. Yeah, that's right. And as you look at her, she's sort of pulling in this goblet, seemingly closer to her. It could also just be the artistry here, but and that goblet, right, represents emotion and creativity and intuition and spirituality and all the things that as a child you're, maybe not incentivized to prioritize, um, or explore. And so here she is as a queen now, having gone through this cycle, having reached this place of maturity, right? And she's now realizing she's safe to tip her toe into this water and release what no longer serves her. So, and it just feels to me like so many people, peers, colleagues, friends, right? People on the baseball field, there are so many conversations you have in day-to-day life where people are bumping into these themes and they don't even know it. They don't even know it yet. And I think that's amazing and beautiful and gives me a lot of hope. And so if you found this message, maybe there's something in here for you that will give you a bit of affirmation about what you're feeling and why you're feeling it. And perhaps we'll explore what to do. So that was a little bit about the Queen of Cups, who availed herself during the shuffle. Now, beneath the deck, as I shuffled and pulled and so forth, these cards represent our subconscious, right? So the things that we're not thinking about actively, but they're in there. They're deep in our subconscious and they're influencing our conscious thoughts. And so I received the King of Pentacles, which can represent, right, convention. It also represents security and stability and accomplishment and, those masculine qualities about security and material abundance. But again, it's very conventional, very conventional. Now, in addition to that, I received the Coven card, which is a unique card, an extra card for this Black Violet Tarot deck. And it's part of the reason why I love the deck so much. But the Coven deck, rather, the Coven card, talks about sisterhood, solidarity, and secrets, right? And it's three veiled women, right, around a cauldron. And so I'll just read a little excerpt of this card for you. It says, while the Three of Cups celebrates the ideas about sisterhood and so forth in a light and airy way, the Coven represents close friendships as a form of protection. It gives a shout out to the people in your life who have seen you at your worst and accept you as you are without judgment. They know your secrets and you know theirs, and you will always have each other's back. If one person in the Coven needs help planning their next steps, the rest of the group will brainstorm, think things through, or call you on your BS. And with the 11th house showing itself, and with the Queen of Cups releasing the things that no longer serve her, I think, the days of inauthentic connection are just simply gone. And this is, yeah, we're done with it. Because next to that card, we have the Judgment card. And the Judgment card obviously speaks of awakening. In this depiction, we have, a woman sitting in her reflection. And we see, right, she's sitting in between, rather, two trees. And the reflection is of herself in the trees. And a lot of times in traditional Rider-Waite, we see this as, sort of your... the caskets, and you're rising from the caskets, right, to your true higher calling. But it's similar, right? I think everybody that I know and that, I'm having these types of conversations with, we're all kind of sitting here and we're like, this doesn't feel right. And, in small groups, the coven, right, in small groups where we're asking the hard questions to the audiences that we feel safe with. And it's challenging societal conventional norms. And, right, the next card from Judgment is the Page of Swords, which is youthful curiosity, excitement. It's young and fun energy. It's wanting to learn new things. It's like Gemini. It gives me Gemini energy. And we just had Uranus transit into Gemini after a long stint in Taurus. So like things are going to be speeding up. People are going to be asking hard questions. People are going to be challenging these norms. And I think younger generations, right, they're already more akin to this. Like they already think that a 9-to-5 is a stupid idea, and like, fantastic. I love that they're programmed that way. I think for the rest of us, right, we have a lot of conventional wisdom that can help bridge the transition that society could potentially make as we shift our belief systems and how we do day-to-day life. That's sort of what I'm getting. And that's all the subconscious. So if you're not actively thinking about that on the day-to-day, that absolutely makes sense. All right, and so for the spread itself, I wanted to explore just a quick, opportunity, challenge, outcome reading, and get some insight as to our current energy, right? And so the opportunity for the collective right now is to really give themselves some space. We have the Seven of Wands, which talks about boundaries. Right. And it's again, back to that Queen of Cups. It's giving yourself the space to heal, giving yourself the space to be curious, giving yourself the space to figure out, what you stand for. Because we have the King of Swords next to that. Right. And so the King of Swords often for me represents Aquarius and truth and, actually a lack of emotion, seeing things very clearly without the murkiness of emotion. But, to be able to get to that space, you often have to work through the potentially emotional baggage, and so that you can see things more clearly, right? And you're not feeling your way through a situation, right? And to do that, right, you got to create those boundaries for yourself. If you don't know what you stand for, you'll fall for anything, right? I think that's the adage. I don't know. And then we have the Two of Pentacles, right, which talks about juggling, right? We are in a place where, well, I can't speak for everybody, but I find that a lot of people I know are, and myself included, feel like you're kind of straddling worlds. You're doing a thing, you've been doing it for a long time. It's okay-ish, right? Like, it's okay-ish. There are reasons to have a lot of gratitude, but like, there's something more. And in this particular depiction of the Two of Pentacles, as I reflect on it, right, we have a woman and she has a pentacle in her left hand, and it's a little bit lower. And above, in her right hand, we have a pentacle sort of hovering, right? And this to me represents the 3D versus like the 5D realm, right? Spirituality versus the physical plane that we're on. And it's like in her left hand, she holds that grounded 3D, I can touch it, I can feel it energy, but she's so curious about this metaphysical, right? This pentacle that's hovering, the metaphysical, the spiritual, the what else, these realms. And the opportunity is to, again, get curious, follow follow those childhood passions, right? Like understand, if you can remember back that far, right? What was the first thing you wanted to be when you were a kid? What was the first idea you had? Where did that come from? Where did you abandon it and why? And like, not even just that. Once you have like an understanding of that, like, what are the goofy things you used to do as a child? Like, what were your favorite things to play? So like for me, I used to love to play school. I remember we had a collection of Encyclopedia Britannicas in the house. They were like a coveted treasure. They were such an investment. I did all of my homework out of them as a child. And I also like studied them for fun. And I wouldn't say studied in terms of like significant info retention. More so like, I don't know, I like the pictures and I wanted, to explore the Sahara or something. So it's like when I was a kid, this concept of like teaching, because that's a lot of what I used to play with my stuffed animals and so forth. Like I used to love to teach and play school, and the other thing I really loved playing was like supermarket, which is so silly. I used to love the supermarket, and I love the checkout, and I love the social aspect of like seeing people, and it's like those two themes have been very present, unbeknownst to me until recently, throughout my life, right? When I get interested in something, I really throw myself into it all the way. And there are things that hold me back, right? The way I look, the way I present, whatever. But I try to become very knowledgeable about certain topics to the point where I can ingest information and flip it and offer it to somebody else. I have hated the moments in my life in traditional corporate America where I encounter people who regard information as power. It is one of the things that unseats me. And when I was very young, and I wasn't very balanced or grounded in any of those things, like it would incite such frustration in me because it's just so divisive and so manipulative. And I've never understood why we use our energy in that way. And I've been naive. So whatever, people do that. So it's unfortunately a fact and truth of life and humanity and all the things. And, not to say that I haven't had subpar moments myself, right? So I'm sure I have. All right. So that was a little bit of a tangent there, but I feel like that's really the opportunity that we have as a collective right now. Before we're cruising into summer, kids are about to get out of school. It is the time for play and fun and hopefully vacation and time for yourself and your family and the things that matter to you. right? And like sitting around a bonfire, sitting around the shoreline, and letting the beach and the water crust your toes, like dipping your toes in the pool or the lake or whatever it is, right? That Queen of Cups is here to say, hey, release the stuff that is too heavy and tip your toe in the water of something new. And that's the opportunity that we all have right now. And to get back in there and explore those childhood truths that we've shoved away in a closet somewhere. The challenge, as we do this, we have the devil, which is the Capricornian energy, the natural ruler of the 10th house. And Saturn's a big, piece of this, right? So convention, time, effort, the way things are, like things take work, right? So on the one hand, we can have our head in the clouds and dream big and, go down these dreamy rabbit holes. But like, a kite would fly away without its cord, right? So, or the string rather. So it's like, understand where and why and how you want to challenge convention, but understand that it's not a free pass. It's not like you're not just going to go lay in the grass and your life is going to exist exactly as it is today or improve drastically, whatever you want to manifest. Like, it takes work. So being clear about that and understanding, right, where we retain our power versus how we give it away, getting clear on that is going to be a big thing and a challenge for many. It takes a lot of work to see in certain relationships, right? Like how you get there. And a lot of times it's patterns. It's patterns that have been imprinted in you, as a child, right? Chronic people-pleasing behavior is pervasive in corporate America. If you look at individual contributors and middle management, right? Like, I have self-identified as a doormat for many years. And I had to stop that because it burned me out entirely. But it took me a really long time to unpack and to see clearly, which we have the Ace of Swords next to it, where I gave my power away, why I did, right? And that led me to create really strong boundaries. And again, I don't know that I execute that in the best way. Personally, I'm a Cancer, right? So I like Cancer sun. So I'll get into my protective shell, and I put sort of my claws out, if you will. So that's the hard part. But give yourself grace, because we have the Page of Cups here, right? Which is like, again, intuition, creativity, childlike wonder, but also an apology. So you have to forgive yourself. Like, if this resonates for you, obviously, if it doesn't, you've maybe not even found it. But make sure to forgive yourself, because it's all part of the process. Like, if you don't go through hard things, how can you appreciate how good things can really be, right? Like you have to have an equal measure of opposite proportion, you know? So like if you've lived a life of, you know, easy peasy lemon squeezy, like there's a good chance that you don't really appreciate how good things are because you've not felt the pain, the anguish, right? The grief, the sorrows, right? At sort of the deepest depths to really relish how great things are. So keep that in mind. In terms of like the outcome, we have the Magician, the Queen of Pentacles, and the Four of Pentacles. This is beautiful, right? The Magician is the master manifester. It's affirmation that everything you need you already possess. It's within you. You have all the tools you need. And you can create, right? The Queen of Pentacles, she is the queen of material abundance. You can birth new ideas. You have everything you need to be abundant. And it doesn't have to be money. It can be. But like, what is this new, what is your wish? What does your, like, if you weren't worried about your mortgage, like, or your rent, or whatever, car payments, and you know, like these mundane things, how would you define abundance? Is it a slow morning? Because I love a slow morning. Is it being able to go for a walk midday? Is it having your own land that you can farm or have a garden on? Is it planting flowers? What is it? Because those things, right? I don't know that we celebrate those things as much as we could or should. Like that's not the measure of abundance right now. And I think that's part of what's shifting. It's not just like, hey, do you have a fancy car and, you know, one up the Joneses in terms of like who has the most immaculately organized pantry. I think that stuff's on its way out. Or there's an audience that's becoming disenchanted by like that vibe, that energy of consumption and more, and like always chasing the thing. I forget what celebrity said it. Was it maybe Heath Ledger? It's like everybody asks you what you do for a living and nobody asks you if you're happy. And I remember my daughter came home from school recently and, you know, was telling me a story about one of her friends. And, you know, she said, oh, so-and-so said their mom's broke. And I said, what? She said, yeah, she said her mom's always broke. Like, I guess her job doesn't pay her a lot of money. And I asked my daughter, I said, well, is her mom happy? And she said, yeah. I said, well, that's good enough. And she just kind of looked at me and she's like, yeah. So it's like, who cares? You know, and if you're not broke, right? Like, what are you doing with that abundance? Are you using it for good? Are you using it to help others? And I think there's going to be a bit of a shift, right? Because then we have the Four of Pentacles, which the Four of Pentacles can represent a solid foundation, right? In your quest to, you know, the Queen, right? You're going to build this new solid foundation for yourself. But again, earlier I was talking about bridging this gap. And in the depiction of the Four of Pentacles in this particular deck, we have the veiled woman with the three pentacles at her feet. She's holding one, but she's in between two pieces of earth, if you will, right? It looks like there's just been like sort of a hole, and she's in the hole. And it's like a lot of times you can read the Four of Pentacles as being stubborn or stuck or holding on too tightly to things. But in this view, I kind of see it as like, hey, I'm building a solid foundation to bridge the gap to my new life. And so, I mean, yeah, who wouldn't want to be a part of that? Okay. Hopefully this has been helpful. There's something in there that's given you a little bit of hope, a reason to ask maybe a woo-woo question or two of yourself. Pulling a few additional cards here. Yeah. Again, it's a lot about finding your tribe, finding your coven, if you will, the sisterhood. The 11th house, again, rules, extended networks. I think, you know, if people are leaving your life, or if you're finding connections bring you anxiety where they once did not, listen to your intuition about that, right? Because you're being called to learn about yourself at a higher level. You're being called to learn about yourself and connect with your higher self, connect with your ancestors, connect with spirit, you know, because it's here to help you on this 3D plane. They're here to guide you on this 3D plane. And there are people around you, right? There are true friends right down the street, maybe, I don't know. But there are people that you can connect with that are also here to balance the experience. It doesn't